Yes. Okay. I should have got a haircut today. I've been having the shittiest day today. Um, I sort of made a mistake at work and driving to work, I missed my exit. It wasn't just that it wasn't like a diversion where I missed. I was forced. It was that made the conscious decision. I was like, no, that isn't my exit. It hasn't arrived yet, or I haven't met my exit yet. It must be the next one. And I drove 10 miles further, turned around 10 miles back. Annoying. Right. I have found a pen. For some reason, OneNote isn't working, so I can't show you what I'm doing. But I have lessons to prepare for and not enough time. So, before... this is a problem with online engagement lessons. I have online stuff. Ideally, I want to be in front of my computer, which is here in my room, and all my stuff, my books, my monitor, and my webcam and all that sort of stuff. But immediately after where the lesson will stop, as in the online engagement, I have to be in person in a lecture theatre in 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes. And it's just like I can't get there in time, so I have to take my laptop and sit randomly in a library, a cafe, my car. Well, maybe not a car, but it is quite annoying. And yeah. What else? What else? What have I done today? I've checked my modules. I've got my timetable for that. It's 9:16. I need to get up. I really should have known this. Right, I need to leave. I need to wake up at 8 o'clock. That's not that bad compared to my Friday. Right, this week we will be introducing the module Thinking About Definitions of Love and what love elegy is, introducing both Ovid and Propertius, and discussing the first poems of each book. In an unseen section, advanced students will be reading more poems, while immediates will read more of Ovid Amores 1.1. In language grammar support classes, we will be assessing your confidence and needs and planning for the semester. The tabs below detail the activities and preparation expected of each of... This is worded badly. The tabs below detail the activities and preparation expected for each of the week's classes. Why couldn't it just say the tabs below detail the activities and preparation expected for each of the week's classes? Why do you need the other of? Or was that a mistake? Anyway, the first class for this week takes place on Tuesday the 5th of October at 11 a.m. in that building. I need to prepare myself in terms of thematic discussion, grammar, and something that's unseen, but I need to prepare myself even though I can't see it. Before reading your set text, begin reading your set text. Intermediate students should read Ovid 1.1. Ovid 1. So that's 1.1. That's 1. Okay. This is confusing AF. Do I read this? Okay. Let's begin. If I write down notes, probably. Think about your existing knowledge of Latin love elegy. What have you read? The things that were in a previous module. What do you remember? Nothing. Think about cultural constructions of love and romantic relationships. What is love? I don't want to come across as a Philistine. Okay, Google. Define Philistine. Right, okay. I have an email. Your credit card statement is now... Okay, that is not going to be good. Read this article in The Atlantic about the overlap between stalking behavior and romantic comedy tropes and how these tropes affect people's perceptions and beliefs about relationships. Okay, I'm just going to read. Arma gravi numero violentaque bella parabam edere materia conveniente mondis par erat inferio urasus recise cupido dicitor atque unum suripussia pediem quis tibi scegue puere dedit hoc in carmina iuris pieridum uets non tue turba sumus quid si praeripiat flaue Venus arma inerue uentilet accensas flora minerua faces quis probet in siluis carrerem regnare eugosis lege no, would it be far or would it be paha? Partrate virginis aura colli crinibus in signem quis actua cuspride phobum instruat auniam marte movente leram sunt tibi magna puere nimiuque potentia regna cor optus advectas arbitritos nauam. I was preparing to tell in a solemn rhythm of arms and violent wars, with subject matching meter, The second line was equal to the first, but Cupid is said to have laughed and stolen away one foot. Who gave you, cruel boy, this right over poetry? We bards are the throng of the muses, not yours. What if Venus sized the weapons of golden-haired Minerva, while golden-haired Minerva fanned the lighted torches? Who would approve of Circe's reigning in the mountain forests, while the fields were tilled under the rule of the maiden with the quiver? Who would equip Phobos of the splendid locks with the sharp-pointed spear, while Mars strummed the Ionian lyre? You have a great kingdom, my boy, and a too powerful one. Why do you aspire in your ambition to a further Ovid begins by claiming that he was planning to write a martial epic in solemn dactylic hexameter, but that when he came to write the second hexameter, he found that it had one foot missing, and was thus a pentameter, so that he had in fact written an elegant couplet. The blame for this is to be laid, he hints, though the use of dictor suggests that he is not entirely serious, on Cupid, god of love. There is no need suppose that There is no need to suppose that Ovid was actually contemplating the composition of an epic, even though he later tells us its proposed subject. This opening is in fact a witty variation on the traditional apology of the writer of lighter forms of poetry for not having attempted something more serious, such as is found in Callimachus and Propertius in Virgil's Eclogues, and in Horace's Odes. These poets are all dissuaded from epic by Phoebus Apollo as god of poetry. Ovid's originality lies in replacing the solemn command of Apollo by the furtive theft of Cupid, and in doing this he is seeking not so much to improve upon his models as to parody them. The poet now, without any warning or introduction, addresses Cupid directly, abruptly reminding him that poetry and poets here, called Euates, and solemn old-fashioned name is also applied to prophets and revived by the Augustan poets, are the preserve of the Muses. The warning to Cupid not to trespass in the realm of these goddesses, or in that of Apollo, is preceded by typically Ovidian series of illustrations, in this case emphasizing the intolerability of gods usurping each other's function. These are incongruous, paradoxical examples which Ovid no doubt enjoyed, of Venus and Minerva exchanging love and war, of Circes and Diana exchanging agriculture and hunting, of Phobos and Mars exchanging poetry and war. Each example takes a whole couplet, the descriptive phrases filling out the lines, which at first seem random or conventional, are in fact chosen to heighten the incongruity, which may be pictorial, a quaver in the field of corn, Io, or handsome locks on a field of battle, or verbal. I think there's a mistake. Verbal undertaking? And ad quod uicipetam est, tuat sunt heliconia tempe, ux etiam phobo iam laetra tuta sua est, cum bene surrexit, uesu nova pagina primo attenuat neruas proximus ille meos, nec mihi materia est numeris levi orbos, apta aut puere aut longas compta puella comas, questus eram faratra cum protinas ille soluta legit in exitum spicula facta meum lunaquidque gedu sinuosum fortiter arcum, quodque canas uetes accipe dixit opus miserum, certas habuit puel ille sagittas quaro et in uaco prector regnat amo, sex mihi sugat opus numeris in quinque residat ferrea cum vestris bella ulete mondis. Or is everything everywhere yours? Are the golden gales of Helicon yours? Is even Poebus' own lyre scarcely safe any longer? Each time that a new page starts well for me with the first line, that second line diminishes my power, and I do not have a suitable subject for lighter rhythms, a boy or a girl with long locks well combed. I had utterly this compliant when Fensworth he opened his quiver and selected arrows which had been made for my destruction. He strongly bent his curving bow on his knee and said, "Take this, bard, as a subject for your poems." Alas, that boy had unerring arrows. I am on fire, and love reigns in my once empty heart. Let my work rise in 6 feet and fall again in 5. Iron wars with your metre farewell. Garland your golden brow, my muse, with This is a really weird book. I don't understand how this to a further undertaking. With I'm so confused as to how this book is supposed to be written or read. But, however, intolerable such reversals of divine roles may be in theory. But however intolerable such reversals of divine roles may be in theory, Ovid is compelled to admit, or so he pretends, that in his case Cupid has successfully usurped Phobos' function. He has reduced Ovid's epic hexameter to elegiac couplets, and for this meter the poet protests he has no suitable theme since he is not in love. The assumption that love is the natural theme of elegiac verse is notable. This had not always been so, but it was for a natural assumption after the example of Gaius Propertius and Tibullus. So is the reference to aut puer, aut puella. Aut puel, aut puella. That sounds... I know. But puer means boy, or girl. As a possible subject, Catullus, Horace, and Tibullus had all written love poems to or about young boys as well as their mistresses, and Ovid for the moment leaves the question open whether he will follow their example. The poet's complaint of lack of a theme was of course asking for trouble, and the god's reaction is swift and sure. The graphic description of Cupid as he selects the arrow from his quiver and bends the bow into a crescent on his knee is perhaps based on the sculptures which Ovid had seen, but the dynamic rhythm is his own. The picture builds up smoothly over 3 lines and effectively explores with the release of the arrow in the 4th. The poet utters a conventional cry of dismay, describes his suffering in the conventional metaphor, and acknowledges love as his master. These people are rip-offs in some respects. Oh dear, I pressed a button. All that now remain are two couples of mock registra- All that now remains are two couplets of mock regination. The end neatly echoes the beginning. The meter of war is banished. The meter of love, with its rising and falling rhythm, is accepted. The poet's muse must accept myrtles, sacred to the goddess of love, as her crown, and a couplet of 11 feet, hexameter plus pentameter, as her unit. The word emodulanda is the last playful touch and quaint word combining the idea of melodiousness with that of measuring out. Ovid then has seen fit to introduce his Amores with a playful poem announcing that his theme is to be love, but giving no indication of who its subject is going to be. This unhurried, detached approach is in striking contrast to, for example, the urgency of Propertius, who plunges straight into his theme and indeed begins the first poem of his first book with the same of his mistress and an expression of his misery. From his comparison and Cingere littoria fluentia tempora metro musa per undenos emdullanda pedes. Myrtle from the seashore, for you are to be measured off in 11-foot lengths. From the evident irony of its surrender to Cupid, the reader may well expect a more light-hearted and literary approach to love poetry than is to be found in Propertius or, for that matter, in Catullus or Tibullus. So the scene is set and thus prepared, we may settle back to be entertained rather than to be emotionally stirred. I don't know what any of that was, but I've read it. Think about your existing knowledge of love elegy. What have you read? What do you remember? Think about cultural constructions of love and romantic relationships. What is love? Read this article in the Atlant. Oh right, yes. Dip into the love PDF below. Begin thinking about love poetry as a genre. Read the introduction to the companion to love elegy PDF below. God, there's a lot of reading in this one. Think about. Let's read this one first. Let's see if I can slightly get away with it. Do I have Claro? Will you work for me? Romantic comedies when stalking has a happy ending. Overly persistent pursuit is a staple of movie love stories, but a
romantic comedies
but a new study shows that it could normalize some troubling behaviors.
Romantic comedies are supposed to be escapist, a jaunt into a Romantic comedies are supposed to be escapist. Romantic comedies are supposed to be escapist, a jaunt into a better, more colorful world where journalists can afford giant New York apartments and no obstacle to love is too great to overcome. Except that when you think about it, some of the behavior portrayed as romantic in these movies is, objectively, creepy. I love 14 cruel for Sign Girdvas. Totally out of line, and honestly, Lloyd Dobler from Say Anything was pushing it with his famous jukebox. Even the supposedly pure love of cute baby faced Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Cameron in 10 Things I Hate About You involves teaching himself just enough French that he can pose as a tutor and hang out with his beloved. Oh, and hiring a guy to go out with her sister. The Onion, as always, sums it up well. Romantic comedy behavior gets real-life man arrested. Reasonable people know that rom-coms aren't what love is really like, just as reasonable people know that porn is not what sex is really like. But these movies still create an image of romance that leaks into the atmosphere and may subtly shape people's perceptions and expectations of love. One troubling way they may do that is by making stalking behavior seem like a normal part of romance, according to a new study by Julia Lipman, a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Communication Studies at the University of Michigan. She had a group of 426 women each watch one of 6 movies that had been edited down to a half an hour, a romantic comedy where a man pursues a woman and it's depicted positively. There's Something About My Or Management, a movie where a man pursues a woman romantically and it's depicted as scary, Sleeping with the Enemy or Enough, or a nature documentary, March of the Penguins or Winged Migration, as the control. After the screening, the women took a survey ranking their agreement with several stalking myths, such as many alleged stalking victims are actually people who played hard to get and changed their minds afterwards, or an individual who goes to the extremes of stalking must really feel passionately for his/her love interest. Those who saw the scary stalking movies were less likely than the control group or the rom-com viewers to endorse these myths. Women who watched the rom-coms endorsed these myths more if they reported feeling transported by the movie, or thinking that the movie was realistic. Grand gestures of rom-coms, like hiring a par to track down your high school prom date, as happens in Here's Something About Mary, are often framed as unequivocal signs of true love, Lipman writes. Indeed, they may be seen as reflecting one of the great cultural myths of romantic love, that no matter how big the obstacle, love will conquer all.
Is flying across the country and showing up at someone's doorstep unannounced to declare your feelings an unhindered violation, or a brave and valuable display of love?
But there are those who would agree with.
Okay, yeah, enough of that. Let's go back to actually learning something. Which one is it first? It's Roland. There we go. This is 241 pages. Which one? Okay, let's go into begin thinking about Latin love poetry as a genre. Read the introduction to Cambridge Companion to Latin Love Elegy. Presumably it's this. This is 20 pages. No, just put it into downloads.
Thea S. Thorson. Introduction. Latin Love Elegy. If only Christ had read the Latin love elegists. Joseph Brodsky 1. Joseph Brodsky 1. Ever since antiquity, the art form of elegy has proved astonishingly vital. Elegy provided inspiration for artistic achievements throughout the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and even today. Nevertheless, compared with its rich reception history, the period during which Latin love elegy flourished is surprisingly brief. The poetic body of Latin love elegy was fashioned by a relatively small group of poets who were active some 50 years in ancient Rome, during the transition between the Roman Republic and the monarchy of Augustus. The Latin love elegists revived and refined an existing art form, that is poetry in a certain metrical pattern known as elegy, attested in ancient Greece from around 700 BC. During the centuries when elegies were composed in Greek, this literary form was to accommodate an astonishingly wide range of themes. 3 However, at the time when the Latin love elegists were active, I am grateful to Stephen Harrison and the anonymous reader at the press for precious feedback on this introduction. 1 According to the Polish poet Adam Zagajewski, as confided to me in oral communication. 2 For examples of such artistic achievement. Elegy was principally associated with a tradition of loss and lament. 4 The great achievement of the Latin love elegists was that they merged the mode of lament with the concept of totalitarian love. The ideal of love in Latin love elegy represents a turning point in the literary history of the West. This is not to say that love is an unimportant theme in classical literature outside Latin love elegy, but rather that love within this literary genre is of a different kind. Love for love's sake, that is the rule in the world of Latin love elegy. Latin elegiac love has no explanation, it appears as its own cause and effect and seems self-sufficient. In other ancient literature, love may regularly be explained by factors that are external to the experience of love itself. 6 Thus, love may be represented as madness due to divine will, as is often the case in the literary genres of Hunter in this volume. In this context, the elegy of Andromache in Euripides' eponymous tragedy, LL 103:16, where a lament occurs in the elegiac meter within the framework of tragedy, remains unique. For the explanation of the origin of elegy as lament is attested in Horace, who writes Ursibus imparita iunctis queremonia primum /post etiam inclusa istuoti sententia compos /keys tamen exigios elegus emisserit aucta /grammatici certantit ad hoc sub iudis lees ist, as p. 75-8, elegy was, first a lament composed with unequally joined verses, thereafter a thought with the power of a granted prayer was included, but grammarians fight over which author first produced little elegies, and the debate is still. Epic and tragedy. Love may also be linked to simple sexual satisfaction, as in Attic comedy. A pretext for marriage is a further function of love in classical literature, as exemplified by the theatrical genre of new comedy. Here, the love of a young man for his girl has the precise purpose of unfolding a plot, which is destined to close with the marital union between the two. There are reminiscences of almost all these kinds of love in Latin love elegy. To be sure, the elegiac concept of love may occasionally resemble a divine curse. Especially the child god Amor, love, also called Cupid, lust, is prone to inflict pain and misery on the Latin elegiac lover. However, because of the inconstancy with which the elegiac child god is depicted, this divinity never seems to acquire the rationale of a wronged god in search of vengeance, as in epic and tragedy. Furthermore, the concept of Latin elegiac love does include sexual pleasure. Yet such pleasure rarely provides lasting satisfaction for the Latin elegiac lover, who longs for his beloved's affection as much as her body. 7 Finally, a number of features of new comedy reverberate through Latin love elegy. 8 However, marriage as a consequence of love remains a concept starkly alien to this poetic genre. The ambition of Latin elegiac love is decidedly neither marriage nor offspring. Latin elegiac love has no objective but to worship the beloved, even in the face of danger, rejection and humiliation. As such, Latin elegiac love resembles most closely the kind of love which in other ancient literature is most vigorously explored in the Homoerotic tradition. In Greek archaic lyric, the woman poet Sappho, latter half of the 7th century BC, is one of the most prominent exponents of this tradition, which is later extended by the body of pederastic love poetry for beautiful boys. In the homoerotic tradition of same-sex longing and despair, love can have no cause other than the beauty and person of the beloved and no aim other than the bliss that the lover may experience if the beloved should grant him or her access. This is also the case in Latin love elegy. In contrast to the tradition of homoerotic and pederastic poetry, Latin elegiac love is employed in predominantly heterosexual relationships. 9 The heterosexual relationships of Latin love elegy regularly consist in a male character featured as the elegist himself and a female character featured as his beloved. Latin love elegy is in fact the classical genre that most systematically combines heterosexual relationships with a concept of love presented not as divine retribution, carnal hedonism or social function serving the establishment by producing as, but as love for love's sake. The fact that the couple consists of
just 1 second. Very interesting that anyway.
The fact that the couple consists of a man and a woman, normally the prerequisite for upholding family and tradition by producing heirs, enhances the elegiac experience of impossible, yet inescapable and therefore irrational love. From the point of view of our present day, the concept of such impossible love between a man and woman may seem trivial. However, the seeming triviality is a sign of success. After Latin love elegy, love for love's sake in heterosexual relationships is the rule in Western literature and indeed in Western culture. Genre. Latin love elegy is a perfect case for studying a literary genre. A distinct unity makes this genre easily identifiable among ancient literary forms. 10. This unity concerns the genre's era, 51 BC, location, Rome, theme, love, and form, the elegiac couplet. An elegiac couplet consists of a dactylic hexameter, followed by a dactylic pentameter, see chapter 23, and the Latin love elegists adapted it from Greek elegy to the prosody of the Latin language. When considering the genre of Latin love elegy from a metrical perspective, it is useful to recall that the elegiac couplet also occurs in a different yet similar poetic genre known as epigram. This Greek term means inscription and originally denoted inscribed verses in various meters, often on tombs in commemoration of deceased persons. From the 3rd century BC, Greek epigram was cultivated as a literary genre, accommodating a wide range of topics. At the time of the Latin love elegists, there was a considerable body of epigrammatic poetry in elegiac couplets on such topics as grief and love, compare Keith 2011. Consequently, there are overlaps in form as well as content between the genres of epigram and elegy. However, epigrams are normally short, often no more than 2 couplets, equals 4 lines, long. In Latin love elegy a poem usually runs for more than 4 couplets, equals 8 lines. The genre's appearance in one place at one time is thus matched not only by one theme, but also one form, namely a certain number of elegiac couplets. 10. Thus, of all the ancient genres available, Latin love elegy is the case in point of Farel's exposition of classical genre in theory and practice, since Latin love elegy is easy to define. Farel, 2003, 397. I am grateful to the author for a copy of the article. 4. Downloaded from https:// Furthermore, Latin love elegy is profoundly literary in a way that facilitates metageneric reflection. In the universe of this genre, there is a mostly insurmountable gap between what the elegiac lover desires and what he experiences. The contrast between what the Latin elegiac lover longs for, joy, mutual fidelity and love until death, and what he gets, disillusionment, creates the very raison d'etre of Latin love elegy as poetry. When the Latin elegiac lover does not get what he wants, he writes about it instead. The continuous experience of non-fulfillment urges the elegiac lover to vent his frustration in verse, along with repeated attempts at seduction, sometimes accompanied by memories of occasional bliss, which explains the erotic persuasive, compare Blanda. Elegia, of Rem. 379. Charming elegy, and, more frequently, erotic pathetic, compare Phlebolis. Elegia, of 3.9.3, Tearful elegy, modes of Latin love elegy. In the Latin elegiac world, life can in fact consist in one of only 2 activities, love-making, if the beloved is present and accessible, and writing about past joys, future hopes and imminent anguish, if the lover is denied access to his beloved, not infrequently by the beloved herself. Making love and making poetry are thus the only 2 modes of existence in the world of Latin love elegy. The fiction of Latin love elegy is consequently that there is no fiction. The artistic accomplishment of such non-fictional fiction is enhanced by the use of the elegist's own names and, allegedly, Pseudonyms for the names of the real girls they love, compare. Of 2.17.2930, Ars 3.538 and Apol. Apol. 10. Large number of poets from different places and spans several centuries. By contrast, ancient sources, of tr. 4.10.534, compare. Ars 3.5368 and Kint. Inst. Or. The 10th of January, 1993, provide us with a neat canon of 4 Latin love elegists, who all flourished in Rome during the last half of the 1st century BC. Cornelius Gallus, 70/6927/26 BC, who is said to have composed 4 lost books of elegies entitled Amores, Servius ad Buc. 10.1, Loves, centered on the female figure of Lycoris. Tibullus, between 55 and 48 to 19 BC, the author of 2 poetry books, centered on the female figures of Delia and Nemesis, respectively, both of which are transmitted together with a 3rd book of compositions by other poets, also known as the Appendix Tibulliana, compare. Tr. Ankle 1990. Propertius, born between 54 and 47, died after 16 BC, who produced 4 books of elegies where Cynthia is the leading lady. Ovid, 43 BC AD 17, who composed a number of erotic elegiac works, among which the 3 books of elegies entitled Amores, centered on the female figure of Carina, are the most conventional. Appearance in one place, then, during the course of 1/2 century, of one kind of theme, one metrical form and one canon of poets, these are the hallmarks of the genre of Latin love elegy. But despite these well-defined features, problems in defining Latin love elegy remain. The dispute continues over whether Catullus, c. 8454 BC, should be counted among Latin love elegists, compare. Ray 2012. The ambiguity of Catullus' elegiac status is reflected in this companion, where the poet is represented as an elegiac predecessor by Federica Bisson in Chapter 2 and as an elegist proper by Paul Allen Miller in Chapter 10. Catullus uses the elegiac couplet in longer elegies as well as in epigrams. However, the love for his Leontian, presumably named after Hermesianax's beloved, is taken into account. In addition to Hermesianax, Callimachus also seems Pula, girl, Lesbia, which is as obsessive and tormented as the love of any of the canonical elegists, does not know the metrical boundaries of Latin love elegy. The lyrical versatility of Catullus, who masters many meters, marks his distance from canonical erotic elegy. Nevertheless, Catullus' portrayal of Lesbia and the feelings he claims that she provokes in him aligns him with the other Latin elegists. Even within the canon of Latin love elegists, there are problems concerning chronology. Ovid, who must be responsible for the self-serving concept of 4 canonical elegists, repeatedly mentions Tibullus before Propertius among them, compare. Of Rem. 7634, tr. 2.44568 and tr. 4.10.514. In Chapter 2, Bisson draws a suggestive picture of the intense literary activity that marked the end of the Roman Republic, whose fragmentary poetic remains are still being recovered. In Chapter 3, Emmanuel Raymond challenges the notion that Gallus was the first inventor of the genre and suggests that the fragmentary state of the generation of poets to which Gallus belongs allows for well-founded doubts as to whether he single-handedly introduced the genre, or rather refined an existing trend. In Chapter 6 on Propertius, Alison Keith corroborates the general view that Propertius' first book of elegies, the Monobiblos, one book, preceded the first book of Tibullus' elegies. For a different view, see Knox 2005. On this assumption, Propertius' elegiac debut is the earliest complete work we possess of Latin love elegy. But the 4 poetry books of the Propertian corpus certainly did not precede Tibullus' 2 collections of elegies in their entirety. Rather, the chronology of the oeuvre of the 2 poets intertwined, with Tibullus' first book seemingly appearing before the second book of Propertius, which in turn preceded the second book of Tibullus. Compare. Line 1998 equals 2007, 25182. The Ovidian order of canonical elegists is reflected in this companion in the sense that the chapter on Tibullus comes before Propertius. This organization is not meant to challenge the ruling opinion that Propertius Monobiblos is the first extant elegy book in Latin so much as to reflect the principal place of Tibullus in a different kind of order, based on auctoritas, authority, that certain ancient literary critics recognized in his elegiac works, and that forms the intriguing point of departure for Partialiste comes chapter 4. From another point of view of retrospect, with Ovid Tibullus' work certainly terminated earlier than Propertius, and fame beyond the reach of carping criticism conventionally began with the poet's death and its elegiac lamentation, of 1.15.3940, for the funeral of Tibullus and Tibullan elegy, c. of. Least comes chapter also treats the non-canonical poet Lygamus, whose elegies are transmitted as a part of the Tibullan corpus along with a number of other poets in the Appendix Tibulliana. The much-discussed date of Lygamus, whose identity has remained a puzzle throughout the centuries, may be as late as the Flavian period. Compare. Antolin 1996, see however OCD, 899. The fact that Least comes chapter gives ample space to Tibullus, the poet who may be regarded as the principal erotic elegist in terms of ancient conceptions of authority, but also includes Lygamus, who was possibly the latest of the classical, but non-canonical, elegists, should serve as a reminder of the uncertainty besetting established chronologies of ancient literature. Ends. The self-contained universe of Latin love elegy reveals an obsession with its own well-defined borders. In fact, the genre's unity, i.e., one time, one place, one theme, one form, one canon, proves an excellent point of departure for exploring the other by means of both contrasts and similarities. The genesis and immediate development of the genre that is so easy to pinpoint allows us to observe Latin love elegy as a literary laboratory, where poetic experiments are carried out. During these experiments, not only the drawing but also the violation of the genre's limits occurs, 2 processes that both however paradoxically contribute to the ultimate assertion of the generic identity of Latin love elegy. This dynamic is most obvious in the case of Ovid, whose erotic output in elegiac couplets sports a wide range of diverse realizations of the genre, as I try to demonstrate in chapter 7. Nonetheless, even the classic examples of Latin love elegy, Ovid's arch-elegiac amores included, encompass features that herald the genre's end. Most shocking, perhaps, is that none of the extant canonical elegists remains true to the one love they profess, as Roy Gibson shows in chapter 13, directly challenging orthodox erotic elegiac scholarship. Similarly, in chapter 14, Lisa Piazzi demonstrates how erotic elegiac promiscuity extends through the field of literary genres as she points out how Latin love elegy frequently engages in adulterous liaisons with other forms of poetry. However, Piazzi concludes her chapter by suggesting that the elegist's zealous interest in other genres expresses nostalgia for a literary past, rather than anticipation of its own closure. Perhaps the marked genesis, floor root and end of the erotic elegiac genre enhanced a particular elegiac consciousness, as it were, of the literary landscape it left behind. Perhaps this would be equally true of what lay ahead for the genre. In chapter 15, John F. Miller demonstrates how the power of the erotic elegiac genre prevails even as the last 2. 8. Downloaded from https://www.cambridge.org/core. Canonical love elegists, Propertius and Ovid, explicitly distance themselves from the genre by turning to etiological projects. Gender. Felix Iris Lex Funeris Illa Maritis. Quos auroras sues rubra colorat aci. Nunc ubi mortifero eicta ist fax ultima lecto. Uxorum fusi stat pia turba cummis. Id certum inhabent leti, qua uiua sequita. Conirugium, puda ist non liquis mori. Prop. 3.13.1520. Happy is that funeral custom, equals sati, for the husbands of the East, whom reddening Aurora colors with her waters. For when the last torch is thrown onto the corpse-bearing pyre, the righteous crowd of wives stand with dishevelled hair, and there is a competition between them to be the one who follows her husband alive. It brings shame not to be allowed to die. A complex representation of gender is a hallmark of Latin love elegy. This passage from Propertius 3.13 is as an example of how Latin love elegy may serve as a vehicle for male chauvinist ideals. Here, the elegiac lover's envy of Indian men for the practice of sati, according to which it is morally unacceptable for a woman to live after her husband's death, discloses a destructive wish to control women. The ideal in this passage is that a woman should exist only for her man. When he is dead, her reason for living ceases. The fact that the passage contains a reference to an historical practice, which persisted in India until the 19th century, should serve as a reminder of the intimate way in which Latin love elegy is interwoven with a world of historically real men and women, where sexism is the rule. However, it is precisely against this socio-historical backdrop of sexism and male chauvinism that Latin love elegy frequently represents both genders in irregular, countercultural and even subversive ways. There is dispute over the extent to which Latin love elegy is in fact countercultural or rather a symptom of the general promiscuity and increased liberty for women that evidently marked the end of the Roman Republic. At any event, the all-consuming nature of Latin elegiac love alienates the lover from traditional Roman society and ideals of masculinity. In Chapter 9, Alison Sharrock brilliantly captures the dynamics of this alienation in the concept of nequatia, badness, which renders the life of the poet-lover pointless, yet naughty and therefore ultimately potent as a socially subversive form of existence from the traditionalist's point of view. 9. Downloaded from https://www.cambridge.org/core. In Latin love elegy, the poet-lover is regularly portrayed as being just as weak as the beloved woman is strong. The poet-lover excels in mollitia, softness, a quality associated with the feminine and effeminate. As Sharrock points out in Chapter 9, Propertius even casts himself outrageously in the position of an Eunuira, woman who has had only one husband, compare Prop. 2.1.47.8. By contrast, the beloved is normally portrayed not only as dura, hard, but also as domina, owner/mistress. The unequal relationship between the elegiac man and woman is consequently represented as the elegiac lover's serutium amoris, slavery of love, which is the topic of Chapter 11 by Laurel Fulkerson. The concept of the poet-lover's slavery entails not only the subversion of traditional roles of men and women, but also of social class, again to the ultimate empowerment of the elegiac poet-lover. Fulkerson points out how this seemingly paradoxical process has literary consequences in that there seems to be a closer relationship between the elegiac lover and the Seruus Cordidus, clever slave, of comedy than has previously been recognized in erotic elegiac scholarship. Scholarly awareness of the complexities and importance of gender in Latin love elegy has transformed our conception of that genre during the last few decades. Feminist approaches and studies of erotics have not only contributed to profounder insights into the genre proper, but have challenged and changed our understanding of Latin literature and literary culture in general. 13 As with the genre of Latin love elegy itself, issues concerning gender now permeate studies on the topic, see below. A similar approach is applied in this companion. No single chapter is allotted to gender, and the issue is instead addressed throughout the various chapters. Furthermore, one entire chapter is dedicated to Sulpicia, who is usually assumed to be the daughter of the Servius Sulpicius Rufus, who died in 43 BC, compare Cerue Filia Sulpicia, type. 3.16.4, Sulpicia, daughter of Servius, see line, 2007, 34167 and Skoye, chapter 5, in this volume. Sulpicia is the only woman among Augustan poets, and she is a composer of elegiac couplets, whether her poems are considered epigrams. Her longest poem runs to 10 lines, or elegidia, little elegies. Sulpicia is of great significance to Latin love elegy, although she does not make the elegiac canon, and her corpus, which is transmitted in the Appendix Tibuliana, is even smaller than that of Lygamus, see above. For centuries even the possibility of her existence was in doubt. Sulpicia is nevertheless important because she embodies the subversion of established gender models that is so fundamental to the dynamics of Latin love elegy. While the beloved 13 I owe much of this formulation. Women of the male erotic elegists regularly sports traditionally masculine qualities by appearing as strong, hard and dominating. It is important to bear in mind that she emerges as such by being mediated through the matrix of the poet-lover's text. She rarely speaks, and she remains elusive as a subject in her own right. Nevertheless, the poet-lover constantly hints at the reality of the woman he worships, and scholarly debate continues over the degree to which the elegiac Pula is purely scripta, written, compare Prop. 8.10.8, and the fictitious object of the poet's creation. Even the female voice recorded in Ovid's Heroids 1:15, Heroines, a work that consists of love and hate, letters purportedly penned by women from legend and literature, remains a work written by Ovid, as he underscored for example. Inum 8.18. Most, but not all, scholars now agree that Sulpicia is not a pula scripta. Instead, she represents the genuine subject position of a woman who wrote about her love for the male character Cerinthus in Latin elegiac couplets. 14 In chapter 5 Mathilde Skoye updates both Sulpician and erotic elegiac scholarship by gauging the extent to which this poet adheres to the genre of Latin love elegy. Politics. Latin love elegy remains ambiguous in the context of ruling Augustan ideology. The establishment of the Augustan regime coincides in time and place with the floor root of the genre. In Chapter 8 Stephen Harrison outlines the profound ways in which this poetic genre reflects and refashions the contemporary setting of the elegists during the latter half of the 1st century SC in Rome against the backdrop of the emergent Augustan regime. In this contemporary setting, the antisocial posture of the elegiac poet-lover, captured in the concept of nequatia as explored by Sharrock in Chapter 9, has plenty of political poignancy. The ambition of Augustan ideology is totalitarian. All aspects of life, official roles as well as intimate relationships, were to be regulated according to the regime's fictive hierarchy of values and moral codes. As already pointed out, Latin elegiac love is also totalitarian and competes as such with the ruling ideology of the contemporary world of the elegists. The Clash of 14 pointing out the most severe problem concerning Sulpicia, namely that what is presumed to be her own composition, type. 3.1318, a total of 40 lines, is preceded by 5 poems that represent a series of exchanges between herself and her beloved Cerinthus, type. 3.81a, a total of 114 lines. The anonymous reader asks, so we are meant to think Cerinthus and Sulpicia sat down together to write their answering sequence? That is the problem for those who believe Sulpicia wrote Sulpicia's poems. 11. Downloaded from https://www.cambridge.org/core. These two regimes, that of love and that of politics, is a part of the fiction of Latin love elegy and produces numerous dilemmas for the poet-lover, so that he ultimately has no choice but to submit himself to love, however outrageous this may seem from a conventional point of view. The trope of militia amoris, soldiering of love, freshly explored by Megano Drinkwater in Chapter 12, is illustrative. While pleading that he is completely useless in the army of Rome, the poet-lover feels obliged to enroll in the army of love. The end of Latin love elegy in its classical form coincides with the consolidation of the Augustan regime. The postures of the Latin love elegists are politically provocative. For how long could such postures be sustained against the consolidation of Augustan power? Harrison, who poses this question in his chapter, suggests that the social and political loosening which marked the end of the Roman Republic was an apt moment of genesis for an essentially countercultural genre, while moral legislation and an increasingly authoritarian monarchy clearly contributed to its passing. In Chapter 6, Keith's presentation of the poetic career of Propertius corroborates this view. While totalitarian love rules the first book of Propertius, erotic absolutism gradually breaks down in the next two books, while the final collection of elegies, which is dedicated to Roma rather than Amor, focuses on legendary origins of Roman monuments and customs in the etiological tradition. The development of Propertius' poetic career may thus be understood as gradually complying with emergent Augustan ideology, as already touched upon. In Chapter 15, John F. Miller shows, however, how arch-elegiac issues related to gender subversion not only prevail, but arguably become more acute in Propertius' professedly non-erotic final book of elegies. Literary history. Latin love elegy is highly significant in Western literary history. Broadly speaking, the legacy of the genre in question is twofold, as already noted. Latin love elegy embodies.
That was quite difficult, I have to admit. Okay, in class, I will go through the module booklet and explain the rationale behind the plan for the module, any questions, and answer any questions and facilitate the following discussion exercises. What is love elegy? What? Padlet? Padlet linked below. Lecture 1. I'm okay. Right, now grammar. Before the think back upon, come prepared. Are we in October yet? Yes, okay. Don't spend more than 30 minutes on it. It doesn't matter if you don't finish it all. Just let me have whatever you can complete in that time. How long have you been learning Latin? A year. How confident are you feeling about your Latin? Not confident. What sorts of help would you most appreciate? I don't know. What areas of language learning do you find most difficult? The The aim of this test is to help right, try to do your best, but it is intended to work out what you need rather than to evaluate your skills for you to translate the sentence. If you have problems with vocab, feel free to look it up. Don't look up the grammar. What's the difference between vocab and grammar? The vocab is the words. I don't know what... Okay. Okay. I can do that, but it says do it by tomorrow. So I shall, because after tomorrow, where are we? Yes, I don't have anything on Wednesday that I know of. Are we on week? What week are we on? This week. We're on week 3, okay. Let's go back to Latin. Oh yeah, my classics buddy. Let's go to classics. Let's go to autumn semester. Download UN timetable. UON timetable calendar. There used to be a function where you could download it for your calendar. Maybe it's on mine, not even. Good, done, okay. Okay, it's getting late. It's time for me to head to bed. We noticed that you did not complete the checking steps for one or more of your blocks on the 2nd. Yep, 5:30. Please make sure that you follow the steps when you arrive have arrived. In some station, you'll be instructed to scan the QR on the route sheet. Right, time to prepare myself for work tomorrow. Well, not work. It's more... What is it? Oh yes, it's Let me just plan my day tomorrow. So let's get past. What time do my barbers open? Was that 8:45? Wow. Okay, thank you for watching. I'm actually going to go fill up my car because I don't trust whatever happens in the morning, so yeah, that is what's going to happen. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time, probably tomorrow. I'm not really sure what's going to happen. Probably not tomorrow, actually, now thinking about it. Probably on Wednesday. So goodbye. Thank you for watching.